Hello and welcome to episode 104 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is August 13th, 2018. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/104, where you'll find links to the things we talk about, as well as ways to subscribe to us, follow us on all the different platforms, and to check out LibertyMugs.com, where if you subscribe to our newsletter at McFlugel.com, we will give you a discount at LibertyMugs.com. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy Jones, and he's going to introduce our guest and our topic for this episode.
Hey, thank you, Rollo. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Slappy Jones, the Rollo and Slappy Show. Recently, Bitmain, a Bitcoin cryptocurrency company, announced they're going to do an IPA, or at least did some pre-IPA funding.
I think it was a stout, not an IPA.
Did I say IPA?
Yeah.
Got beer on the mind. An initial public offering, an IPO. Okay, so anyway.
These guys don't know anything about Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I was a finance major. Shit.
We're leaving it in.
So Bitmain announces their IPO, does some pre-IPO funding, raise some money from hedge funds and private equity firms, etc. And what does this mean for the Bitcoin market? Well, we're going to bring on our guest today, CarCampIt, who wrote. Yeah, I know. Well, I wanted to get Voluntary Mess, the guy who wrote this article, but we'll settle for CarCampIt because there's a pretty good article written and posted over at medium.com that we'll link to in the show notes. Welcome to the show, CarCampIt.
Thanks for having me.
So, what's up with this? So first I want to say there's a lot of people in the crypto space, I think, and myself included, who don't know a ton of all the little details of how things work, what's going on, why it's important. And you wrote a really good, Voluntary Mess is CarCampIt, by the way. You wrote a really good article kind of going through the basics of it. And we want to talk about that. But why, first of all, why is this important? Why should anyone care if you're holding Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if there is anybody that's more of a Bitcoin Cash guy listening, like I think could be just as concerning to them potentially, and I don't think that we're going to focus a whole lot on the discrepancy between the two in any sort of divisive way. This is important because Bitmain has been a large and very influential player in the cryptocurrency community for, I guess, 5 years, and it's headed by Jihan Wu, who I'm sure most of the listeners have heard of, and they mine. They have mining pools, and they sell ASIC chips, which are it's an application specific integrated circuit, or it's just a computer that's built specifically for mining Bitcoin for the Bitcoin specific hashing algorithm.
So Bitmain's a company that mines Bitcoin, sells these miners,
Yep.
And also has mining pools. So what's a mining pool?
So a mining pool is where a bunch of people can get together and pool their resources in order to create a more steady flow of income through mining. So if you have just one computer in mining for Bitcoin, let's just say you have one ASIC miner or something like that. Well, mathematically, you are destined to solve a block at some point, but it could be a very long time. Let's just say, I know this is going to be wildly inaccurate, but let's just say it's 4 months. Like, let's say with one ASIC miner, you could solve a block once every 4 months.
Mm-hmm. Just to jump in, it's way more than that, probably.
Like, oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
probably
you would
40 years.
You would never be able to do. Yeah, So, which we can kind of dive into why that has been and why that could possibly be a bad thing later in the podcast, but let's just say, 4 or 5 months or whatever for Bitcoin or for anything. You can just say cryptocurrency. Well, if you solve a block every 4 months, let's say the reward is $3,000 or $4,000 or $6,000. What do you do in those 3 months or 4 months in between solving the block? If you're good with your money, you can make it last. But the point is that it could be very irregular income source. Whereas if you join a mining pool, you split every block reward, but that also means other people split it with you. So you can kind of even that out, and maybe you're getting $200 every few days or something like that. So it makes it a lot easier to actually live off of a mining.
So essentially, we're pooling all our mining power together to mine the blocks. Is that essentially what happens? Cool.
So do you know if Bitmain's mining pools are peer-to-peer or if Bitmain actually controls them?
So I think it's a mix, and
okay.
I think a lot of them are peer-to-peer.
Okay.
So yeah. So and that's a big point.
Mm-hmm.
So why does it matter if it's peer-to-peer or controlled by Bitmain?
Rollo?
Oh, because if it's a centralized thing, whoever's controlling the pool can kind of set the header of the block ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And do it in a way and kind of be manipulative of what's going on. And also just kind of do some kind of consensus attacky type things and do it in a way that the rest of the miners in the pool have no idea that it's happening. Whereas if you have a peer-to-peer,
it's decentralized.
It's trustless. Yeah. Like the main Bitcoin protocol. They kind of piggyback off that.
Yeah. So I guess the reason that Bitmain has come to the foreground recently, and they always kind of have been there. They're a very big player in Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies really. But the reason they've kind of come to the foreground recently is that they're going through an initial public offering, an IPO, scheduled sometime in the fourth quarter of 2018 or the first fiscal quarter of 2019. Which is wild. I mean, in the financial world, that is wild. It raises a lot of questions on how you value them, because there's never been any company like Bitmain at this level. So how does somebody go about evaluating what they're worth? Certainly they have revenue, which helps. You can look at that, but the value of each individual cryptocurrency is so volatile. It's a bear market right now. So there's just so much stuff, and people are so not used to crypto, especially in that world.
Yeah. Even in more normalized normal markets, that's not crypto. I mean, when people pull back, like major companies pull back on their IPOs in times like if something gets messed up in the market that they weren't anticipating, they'll pull it out. So for someone to do a major IPO like this in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency this quickly isn't, like you said, it's insane.
It's crazy. So and not only that, but they could be maybe in the top 5 of all IPOs in terms of size ever. And I've read that there is an very outside chance, and I'm sure if the cryptocurrency market turned around before the IPO, it would give them a tailwind and help them out. But I've heard that there's an outside chance they might be competing with Alibaba for the biggest IPO of all time, which was $25 billion. But most people are saying that they're going to be valued somewhere, and I know it's a wide range, but people, we're still a ways out, probably somewhere between 10 and $18 billion. So
it's a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So why does it matter? Why does it matter if Jian Wu or it's publicly owned?
Yeah.
Or what's your concern with it?
Yeah. I'll break this down. And part of I guess there's a couple elements to this. So the first element is that Bitmain has been notoriously pretty closed off. They're a private company. They're under no obligation to, tell anybody the internal dealings or show anybody their books besides probably the Chinese government. If I had to bet, I'd bet there's a lot of fudging involved there.
And just to add credibility to that, China is kind of notorious in the past for doing that. Like
yes.
when there's stories, especially in the material, because there's a lot of material, like raw materials, like steels and stuff it's getting manufactured in China. And I know in my own in the refining industry, a lot of.
I was going to bring that up later, but you beat me to it.
Yeah, that's going to be the new tractor reference. Yeah, killed two birds with one stone there. But for pressure retaining parts, like things that are supposed to hold pressure and not blow up, like metal, different steels and stuff, you're not allowed. A lot of places will not allow Chinese material because they don't have. A lot of businesses over there fudge stuff. There's stories of people literally, as auditors are walking in the front doors, that people are literally running out the back doors and burning paperwork.
Yeah.
Now I think that's been, it's gotten better over time as capitalism has improved over there. It's also helped with that kind of stuff. But at the same time, even in the U.S. and the Western world, cryptocurrency is just absolutely rife with scams and everything. So you combine those two things, absolutely, there's probably nasty stuff going on. But go ahead.
Right. So at any rate, now in something that's, I don't know if it's unprecedented necessarily, but I can't think of a case where a company like this has gone public on any size. They're forced to publicize a lot of their papers and a lot of their books. And recently, a spreadsheet came out showing more or less what they've been doing with their Bitcoin and their Bitcoin Cash that they've both been mining and selling. And it was very interesting to find out that, and I'll back up just for a second here. So if anybody is unaware, Bitcoin had a hard fork. They're probably their most notable hard fork was last August 2017, where Bitcoin Cash forked off from Bitcoin over a disagreement on the protocol. Bitcoin Cash, folks typically want to scale Bitcoin on chain. They were also very opposed to the use of segmented witness or segregated witness, SegWit. Whereas Bitcoin aficionados want a second layer scaling solution so that they can retain small block size on chain. And that's in an attempt, whether it succeeds or not is kind of outside the scope of this podcast, but in an attempt to keep nodes and mining decentralized as possible. So that's the bed that's set. Bitmain is now coming public, and they've been showing that they've been systematically over the last year liquidating all of their Bitcoin funds and actually buying Bitcoin Cash in the open market with that Bitcoin. So they've come to a point now where they own 1 million plus Bitcoin Cash tokens or coins, and they're down to about 22,000 Bitcoins total in reserves. According to these documents, again, it's early and it's China and God knows, but that's what it looks like. That has a couple implications. One of those implications is that they have been effectively propping up the price of Bitcoin Cash for the last year. There's very little, relatively speaking, there's very little liquidity in the Bitcoin Cash market compared to Bitcoin.
So what I'm going to stop you again. What do you mean by that? Like there's no liquidity in the market or not enough liquidity? Or
let's just take 24-hour trading volume as a fraction of what it is in Bitcoin. A small fraction. So there's just not a lot of people trading or using it.
Right. So basically if I had 100 Bitcoin Cash and I go to the exchange and there's only orders for 80 Bitcoin Cash, I wouldn't be liquid.
Yeah, something like that.
Roughly, like maybe a little exaggerated there.
Yeah. You're probably talking on the order of tens of thousands, but yeah.
Yeah, but essentially, like if I sold it all, it would crash the price.
You could, right? Exactly. there is no way that a player like Bitmain, or there's other people with quite a lot of both Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and there's no way in the Bitcoin Cash market right now that a big player can really hide their moves. Not really, anyway. It would be difficult because there's just not enough on the order books to absorb their buy or sell.
Right.
So they're sitting on 1 million Bitcoin Cash plus, over 1 million, according to these records. And whether that was the plan or not, there's not much they can do if they wanted to get rid of them. They could not do it. They would drive the Bitcoin Cash price basically into the ground. I mean, because they'd have to buy the order book down to God knows what. I haven't done the calcs, but
basically nothing.
Probably pretty damn close. Probably double digits, I'd say at least, and I bet a lot lower. So they're sitting on an amount of Bitcoin Cash, which now you kind of get to the point of what's the strategy, or what's the plan here? Is this intentional? Is it not? And that's where we get into the land of speculation. What we're not speculating about, if you choose to believe these early documents that are coming out, and again, they could be inaccurate or fudged. It's still very early, and it's a foreign company, and blah blah blah. But what's not really debatable is that they've been liquidating Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash in the open markets for the last year, and that has had the effect of propping up the Bitcoin Cash price in relation to the Bitcoin price, and almost completely divesting them of Bitcoin. Now they still mine Bitcoin, so they have Bitcoin coming in, but in terms of an actual sitting reserve, I know 22,000 Bitcoin seems like a lot, but it's really not. I'm not on that level, and certainly not in relation to 1 million plus Bitcoin Cash. So that is more or less clear right now. Is that I guess I'll take this time to lay out where we're at in non-speculative terms, and then maybe we can move on to a little bit of speculation. One is that Bitcoin is a huge player in both communities and the greater crypto community. They hold somewhere in the vicinity of 42, 43, 44% of all hashing power on the Bitcoin protocol network. That's Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash. I don't know what they hold in the Bitcoin Cash network, but I assume it's high. So damn near half of the entire hashing power on the Bitcoin network. And that is not necessarily just them. It's them and their peer-to-peer mining pools. So it's not that they alone own it, but they at least have people in their mining pools. And when you sum all of those up, it's damn near half of the entire hashing power of the Bitcoin network. Another thing that's not really disputable is that unless they have reserves that we don't know about, they have somewhere around 22,000 Bitcoins left. And they have been selling them off in order to buy Bitcoin Cash over the last year. And in that process, they've accumulated, what is that, about 5% of the entire Bitcoin Cash reserve. I mean, the Bitcoin Cash probably has a circulating supply of 17, 18, 19 million. And if they own 1 million of them, about somewhere around 5% of all Bitcoin Cash coins are owned by Bitmain. So that's where we're at. I would say that's, Rolo, would you say that's a pretty fair-handed look at just kind of the facts on the ground?
Yep, absolutely.
So that brings that. Now we enter a little bit of the land of speculation. So the first thing that you got to look at is this IPO, how it's going to be valued, and why they're going public. I think that's probably less speculative. If they're looking at early valuations of $16 billion, it starts to become very obvious why they want to do it. That's a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. And that coming into their coffers would be very beneficial, especially if you look at what they've been doing over the last year, selling Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash, which has been from just a number standpoint, a poor trade, and the declining the entire cryptocurrency market. They'd be looking at bringing $16 billion in when everybody else is floundering may not be the right word, but struggling a little bit on a thin year. Rollo, do you have anything to add here?
No, not really. Not yet, at least.
Okay.
I mean,
Slap, any questions?
No, yeah, I don't know. Maybe later. One of the things I'm kind of thinking. So, why are they doing? Maybe we're getting to that, but why are they doing this IPO?
Yeah, that's what I'm
They
doing.
need the liquidity in the company. They need some cash there. They want to expand.
Well,
Do they have their plans?
I don't think they need it, but I think they want it. So they're not. For instance, they're not going bankrupt. They've got a bunch of money, and not only that, they've got a system that works. I mean, they've got a shitload of miners that they're both using and selling.
Right.
So they're not hurting for money at all. But Jihan is an ex hedge fund manager. The guy is out to make money, which I applaud. But that's what he wants to do, and I'm sure when he caught wind of what they might be valued at, that would be a difficult number to turn down.
Sure.
So
I don't know if this is a good time for it, and maybe we go back to it. But
okay.
I know a lot of people criticize Bitmain for their mining, producing the ASIC miners, and kind of they don't quite have monopoly on it, but they have a huge line share of the market there. People are saying that that's not good. It's unfair. But like you said, you applaud him for trying to make money, and it's the same thing. I mean, if Bitmain is making huge profits selling ASIC miners, and that's a great signal to the market to bring more people into manufacturing them. And so as you get, taking this from J.W. Weatherman, when he talks about it, he goes, you want ASIC miners to be commoditized. You want humans to be able to produce this kind of thing at the very front of our abilities. So having profits there, having that signal from Bitmain is a very good thing. So, I mean, I'm sure we all agree here. So if anyone disagrees on this point I'm about to make, say it. But we're not criticizing Bitmain for, doing very good at mining and producing miners. That's overall a good thing.
I agree.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
and not only that, but I mean, if you look at now, you can say what you want about GPU mining, and I know that's a whole different can of worms. But without ASICs, right now, I mean, the hash rate of the network would be significantly lower.
Right.
It would be likely a lot less centralized, and I think that's a short-term problem right now, and we're probably going to lead into a little bit of that. But I think ultimately it'll even itself out, and there's always going to be more powerful computing coming out. And as long as there's a profit incentive like mining Bitcoin, it's going to be applied to Bitcoin. So, it's always going to be this kind of like bump and tug and pull kind of deal. It's never going to be like everybody's got equal miners and they're all set up, just designating a portion of their computer to mining Bitcoin. Those days are over.
Right. And just to push this idea a little bit further is that mining, one of the greatest resources that it takes up is electricity. So it's causing an incentive for cheaper electricity out there. So that's a good thing for society. And also you'll have residual effects from the improvement in computing power for Bitcoin. It should have residual effects in other areas of where computing is necessary.
Yep.
So it's kind of leading a charge. I know people like to poo-poo Bitcoin. Oh, it takes up so much electricity and everything, or it's taken away from other, like my I can't get cheap graphics cards anymore because of Bitcoin mining. Well, maybe in the short term that'll be issues with the graphics card, but overall it's bringing a lot of resources to that market and should drive prices down and make products better. And then the electricity market, there's a huge incentive to lower the cost of electricity. Because if you go on those Bitcoin mining profitability calculators, unless you can get electricity for like a penny or so a kilowatt hour, you don't make money. Even like a mining pool. I was playing around with it, and where I live, I'm paying in like the high teens, I think, per kilowatt hour, and I couldn't I couldn't turn a profit no matter how much hashing I had because
Yeah.
I'd be using so much energy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the truth. And just to compare it to something like fiat, where the effects of fiat to keep its value are presumably basically all negative, the effects from Bitcoin to keep its value is likely very positive.
Right.
It's the effects of bringing so much capital into the computing market like this are probably going to be felt in ways that we don't even understand right now.
And just the money market. I mean, the fact that the innovations in money and that you can actually preserve wealth. I mean, that's going to create so much global wealth. It's probably unfathomable. If Bitcoin becomes money, the benefits that it's going to bring about humanity are probably unfathomable.
Yeah. There's no way. Yeah, we almost can't even get into that because that's like a whole
I know. But it's so much fun to talk about.
Yeah, I know. So where was I? Okay, so Slappy, you were asking if they were kind of hard up for cash, and I said, and we were saying no, they are one of the sole providers of these really powerful ASICs, and so they're not hard up for cash at all. But now, when smart people start doing something that seems dumb, it raises a flag for me. Jihan Wu, whatever anybody feels about the guy personally, is a very smart guy. Like, that guy is sharp. And bleeding out your Bitcoin reserves to buy Bitcoin Cash over the last year, it is dumb. Or seems it. And I just don't think that guy makes dumb moves. There is now, you can make blunders, sure, but this is systematic. And there is one thing that could almost hack the brain and make him do a dumb thing, and that's ego. And it could be that, because Jihan Wu, in combination with Roger Ver and Craig Wright and a number of other actors, were very much proponents of Bitcoin Cash, hard fork, and on-chain scaling. And so, I don't want to be inflammatory, but the cracks are starting to show on that move. And it seems like that is, now I could be wrong, but it seems like that is starting to sputter a little bit. And I think they see it. And while they're not publicly saying it, I think a lot of people are kind of seeing that, they just don't have the number of developers. They don't have the capital. They just can't keep up.
Well, the network was almost just destroyed. The entire Bitcoin Cash was almost just worthless because of a bug that was found by a Bitcoin
developer. Yeah.
So that's worth, I forget his name, the guy who found it, and anonymously
like Jeffrey something, right? Or no, Corey?
Yeah, Corey Felder.
Yeah.
Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
Yeah, Corey Feldman.
That's Seinfeld.
But there's I mean, that's kind of a major issue that you have someone from another project is going and finding your bugs, and it's not a small bug. I mean, Bitcoin has bugs.
Yeah, right.
But they're minor, and there's a lot of workarounds you could do for them. But this literally would have destroyed the network.
Right, and the thing is that when you're working on stuff like this, what's critical is having a lot of eyes on it, and they just don't have the number of developers. They just don't. I mean, it's just a numbers game. Now, if they had killer technology that gave them the upper hand over Bitcoin, then maybe. But it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same protocol minus the SegWit and plus a block size. It's basically the same code, but you're at a massive disadvantage because you just have a small fraction of the developers. So it's just a numbers game. At any rate, I don't want to get way off into the weeds on that. But so the Bitcoin Cash crew about a year ago, put on an all hands on deck campaign to try and get what they were calling the flippening to happen, which was a replacement and market dominance of Bitcoin by Bitcoin Cash. probably, in an effort to bring users over, bring developers over, bring nodes over, bring miners over, the whole deal. So in looking at what Jihan is doing and what Bitmain is doing, it could be ego. It could just be, we are digging our heels in on Bitcoin Cash. We're still making a great profit on mining Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and other currencies. But we're going to hold on to this. And we refuse to let it go. And they're just going to say, this could have been a great coin, ad infinitum. That could be. I wonder if it is, though. I just wonder if it doesn't seem like these guys would do something so systematically. I mean, keep in mind, they built up Bitmain from nothing. In a number of years, they're the power in mining in cryptocurrency. So they know how to do the right stuff. So what is causing this? Why are they voluntarily just burning money? And it makes me think that maybe they've got a plan. They've got something drawn up. And one of the things that I was thinking about was, if they were to continue to do this, sell off the remainder of their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash, methodically and slowly, to keep the price pegged at roughly 1/10 of a Bitcoin, so that there's no major market moves, so nobody gets spooked, over the course of the next 6 to 8 months, and you let the IPO roll through, and now you've got a fresh load of cash. With that cash, you can massively expand your mining operation. I mean, massively. And remember, they've got access to the miners wholesale because they're making them. So I don't know what it is they pay for a single ant miner. I don't know what the unit costs are for increasing the hash power to the point where they can really start to make a dent and get close to that 51% or 50% of the network. But if something's going to do it, I bet 16 Bill could. And the money that they've got coming in every day, which is a lot. They're a very profitable company.
Well, you got to imagine that they've got a pretty good profit margin if they're the only ones making them right now.
Yeah.
So I was checking on Amazon the other day, and I think it was like just for the Antminer, like 14 terahash per second Antminer was like $700, I think, per unit.
Yeah, they're pricey. So could they be keeping their Bitcoin Cash reserves in the wings and keeping the development going just enough, and basically buying time so that they can access more of the mining power for the Bitcoin network, and let time pass between now and the 2020 halving, which is a time for technical reasons, and maybe you can chime in on this, Rolla, but from what I understand, from technical reasons, that is a sensitive time for miners, probably just because it skews with their profit equations.
So when it halves, what happens?
So when the halving occurs, which it will be in, I think, July of 2020, the block reward, which is the newly minted coins that are released for every block that is solved, so every 10 minutes, will go from 12.5, I think it is right now, newly minted coins that are released to the miner that solves the block, down to 6.25.
Yeah, so there's a huge race to win the block rewards right now.
So I imagine once the block reward gets halved, you probably can't sell the miners for as much money.
Well,
it depends on the price of Bitcoin.
Right. It all depends on the price of Bitcoin, and theoretically, a decrease in inflation of Bitcoin would increase. Like, so for example, if you go back to 2016, when the last halving happened, in the run up to it, Bitcoin went from $200 to basically $600 or $800. So it more than made up for it in the perceived increase in value because of the future decrease in inflation.
Well, yeah, it's like any inflation, that the people who get the money first benefit the most.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to be, you're saying it'll already be baked into the price.
Already. Probably, so but it'll make a difference because it'll still be weird.
It's like if today I mine a coin and it's worth, in US dollars. So say I mine 1 Bitcoin today, and tomorrow I can only mine a half. You think that would not be profitable for me, unless the price goes way up overnight.
Well, right. Yeah.
Well,
the point more is that it's just disruptive. It could go one way, it could go the other way, but it's a sensitive time because it's a disruptive time.
So, right. And there's a race to be able to mine as much Bitcoin now.
Before that, yeah.
Right. Now, we're not saying that the price of Bitcoin is going to double at the halvening because
yeah, okay.
But I mean, if I had to bet by 2020, it'll probably double from now at least.
Sure.
Right. But I'm saying that like at the halvening, we're not going to see necessarily
a price before it just jumps up to
right.
Now, the last time from maybe January or no, it's probably even later than that. Probably like February or March of 2016, it started to climb, and it went from maybe 300 or 200 or 300, if I remember correctly, up to maybe 600 or 800.
Right.
And then I think it came back down a little bit on the back end of it, and then proceeded back up, obviously. But it's just a sensitive time, so it would be theoretically an opportune time, either preceding or in the wake of having to attack a network if that's what you wanted to do. So here's where this gets really speculative and could absolutely be wrong, but I just wanted to start the discussion. And that's kind of why I wrote the article. Was I want to start the discussion because I don't think I understand enough about all of it to make an educated guess. But it seems like there's a lot of people who are laughing at Jihan for doing what he's doing and kind of taking a victory lap. And I'm just not sure I'm prepared to do that because people like that don't do stuff like this if they don't have a plan. I don't think. So as we approach the 2020 halving, Jihan and Bitmain will be increasing their wealth, probably increasing their mining power, and building up a massive reserve of Bitcoin Cash, which seems petty now, but could come into play. And they will be looking, I think, especially because based on that past behavior, they'll be looking to, well, from a business standpoint, if you have a whole lot of something, wouldn't you want it to be worth more?
Right.
And so that, I think, could lead them to want to harm the Bitcoin network in favor of the Bitcoin Cash network, because Bitcoin Cash is something that they've always wanted. Bitcoin Cash will certainly favor miners in its protocol, being that everything is done on chain. And they have by that time, maybe they have 2 million of them.
Well, what does a good speculator do? Like, you would expect that Jihan Wu, being a successful hedge fund manager, would be a good speculator. It's that you buy up a bunch of assets or something when the price is low, expecting the value to rise a lot more in the future.
When people are laughing at you.
Right, because it's you need that inside information in order to make a wise speculation decision.
Right. Yep. So my concern is that there's going to be a second attack. And that second attack is going to be largely by the same players, most of whom have accumulated loads of Bitcoin Cash at basement prices. And they'll have every incentive to do so, and possibly every ability to do so, especially if they control 51% of the network. Now, when I say control 51% of the network, I understand that it doesn't necessarily mean that Jihan Wu has 51% of the ant miners in his basement that he can just play with the switches. It's way more complex than that.
But maybe we should talk about, because I know a lot of people don't quite understand that issue, because I've heard people say, well, the 51% attack isn't a concern because you don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. If you're a miner and you gain 51%, even if you gain 75% of the Bitcoin network, if you start launching attacks on it, then people lose trust in it, and there goes the value of the Bitcoin, and now it's not worth anything.
Right. And I'll hop in there. Unless you hold no assets based on that protocol, and you have a backup protocol that runs on the exact same cryptographic hashing algorithm, and all of your miners that were mining the previous protocol are ready to rock and roll on a new one.
Right. The other concern about the more general concern about that, because people kind of dismiss the 51% attack. The more general concern about that is if you have that much hashing power, not that the miner themselves are going to go against those economic incentives that we just mentioned, but it's that now there's a door to kick in. And so a bad player, namely a government, the people who want to destroy Bitcoin the most, now have a vector to attack. They can go and influence Jihan Wu and really change maybe not in this scenario, but influence someone who has the majority hashing power, influence them in a way that it changes their economic incentives and starts having them produce attacks on behalf of the government. Those incentives being, we're going to murder you if you don't, or something like that. I mean, there's a million ways a government can influence someone in very nefarious ways. So that's where the main security threat is with not having miner decentralization, is that it opens up an opportunity for the government to step in and influence in a way that is very detrimental to the network.
Right. So even if it's not Bitcoin Cash, Jihan Wu and Bitmain, just the fact that the power is so centralized, or the mining so centralized, could present an opportunity for an attack, just because the network's compromised by its centralization.
Yes.
So, if they were to do that, if they were to do something like this, I guess you would have to think, what would it look like? And I think that you could see another just PR bonanza, marketing blitz to degrade Bitcoin core protocol and currency, and possibly in combination with screwing around with the network and creating problems where there weren't problems before. Remember that they or their agents or people in cahoots with them did spam the network, or probably spam the network after the Bitcoin Cash fork a year ago. So they're not above this type of thing, and fine. I don't really have a moral issue with it, honestly.
All right, I'm going to stop you for a second, because you keep talking about attacking the network and spamming the network, and what exactly does that mean? I don't want to take it off the rails too far, but
yeah, that's fine. So, for instance, Bitcoin Core has they both have a scaling problem, where before 2017, like 8 people were using each of these coins. So everything functioned fast and smooth, and there was no backlog, anything like that. And Bitcoin, the biggest difference in communities was the way that they wanted to scale. One of them wanted to scale on chain, and one of them wanted a second tier solution off chain. And so during the 2017 run up that started in probably, August or September, right around the time of the fork, a bunch of people started coming into the space, and the price was just going absolutely bonkers. I mean, it went from like 3,000 or 5,000 around this time of year last year to almost 20. Mm-hmm. So it just went through the roof. And of course, Bitcoin transaction fees are denominated in Bitcoin. And then you look at that and you convert it over to dollars. And because of the backlog on the network with Bitcoin, which had not implemented its scaling solution and really still hasn't, which is, admittedly a problem. Like the Bitcoin needs to scale, and I'm glad that they're doing it carefully, but it's something that needs to happen before the next wave of users comes in, because it did get very backlogged.
Right.
So a bunch of users came in. Bitcoin Core, I don't want to say it couldn't handle it, because it did. It processed everything, but it would become very backlogged. And in order to beat that backlog, you could entice miners to take you in the next block by paying fees that got exorbitant. I mean, I don't know what the highest fee I saw was, and who knows if they were right, but probably somewhere between $50 and $100 to send some Bitcoin, which was previously unheard of, to my knowledge anyway. And part of that was just because Bitcoin itself was so expensive. I mean, that was a time when Bitcoin was trading at $18,000. So how many Satoshis was the actual fee? Maybe not all that high, but because Bitcoin was trading so high, it was just an outrageous United States dollar equivalent fee.
Yeah, and also, I was making Bitcoin transactions during that time, and I think the highest I heard was like $60 or something. I never paid anywhere close to that. Like, I paid expensive transaction fees, but not anywhere close. I mean, a lot of people at that point hadn't integrated SegWit yet, which made the transaction size a lot smaller, which made it a lot cheaper. And also, I just don't know if they were using wallets that did good.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I paid more than about $10 for a transaction.
Yeah, that's like what I was doing. But at the same time, with the price of Bitcoin, I mean, it was still a small fraction of what I was moving. I was happy to do it, and
Yeah,
I wasn't getting lost in the mempool either.
No, I wasn't either. But nonetheless, it was happening. You could clearly see that it was happening based on the graphs, that people were getting lost in the mempool a little bit and backlogged and not getting taken for a day. And it definitely was happening. And it's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It truly isn't.
Oh, absolutely.
But looking back, it's fairly clear. I think I don't think there's a whole lot of people that would dispute that probably there was a lot of spamming of the network going on by Bitcoin Cash people sending one Satoshi through the network in coordinated waves to really, really jam up the mempool and start to seed doubt in people's minds that Bitcoin could actually work. And hey, we've got this solution, what Bitcoin people would say is a short-term solution that compromises network security. We've got the solution, and we're sending Bitcoin Cash for fraction of a penny fees. So,
right.
And so it was an easy argument to make, and frankly, an honest one. I mean, they were sending Bitcoin Cash for very, very low fees,
mm-hmm.
and Bitcoin was getting clogged. There's network security implications that we don't really need to get into, but my point is framed right. Anything can look good and anything can look bad.
Right.
And coming back to 2020 halving and what could potentially happen with Bitmain is that they and their cohorts probably have quite an ability to spin, and they have a huge marketing budget and PR budget that they can get in there. And if this is coordinated with a new massive influx of people, which it likely will. I mean, Bitcoin will be due for a bull run in 19, and the halving is coming up. That's going to draw a shitload of new people in who have absolutely no clue. And so you've got a bunch of idiots and a bunch of money. That looks like a target-rich environment for somebody who wants to potentially mislead for their own gain. And I guess what I want to point out is that they could have the ability to do that. They have the ability to plant doubts in the Bitcoin network, potentially owning near 50% or maybe more than 50% of the hashing power, then no longer having an incentive not to tank the protocol because they don't own any anymore, and they can just switch over to mining Bitcoin Cash and mining other cryptocurrencies. Sure, why not? And they've already got a shitload of cash from the IPO to kind of rest on. And if they're successful, and this could be kind of like a damn the torpedoes approach where they just go all in and bank on the fact that they're going to get the flippening to work out. If the market cap stays the same and Bitcoin people start leaving Bitcoin in droves, that market cap gets squeezed over to Bitcoin Cash, and all of these huge reserves that they've been building up are suddenly not worth $400 a piece anymore. Maybe they're worth $20,000 a piece. And that's you could see a 100x move in their coffers. Right. And so, and then, I mean, you've got somebody that's owning, if you're a Bitcoin Cash guy, they probably own the majority of your network too. So it certainly tilts the balance. All of these protocols are built in an interesting way where everybody's on the same team, but everybody's a little bit opposed to each other, the nodes, the miners, the users, et cetera, in order to create the checks and balances of a free market. And when a mining operation like that has that much power and that much money, you could expect them to drive the protocol development or the software development in a way that even if it isn't the best way to go, would favor miners.
Yes, and also the Bitcoin Cash network already isn't very node dense,
right,
compared to Bitcoin. It's that's a problem because the nodes are what verifies transactions and make sure that the miners are following the rules. And if you don't have that the power of the nodes there checking it, then you could propagate some nasty stuff through it.
Yep. So basically what you have is the potential for one company to, and I'm saying potential, realize that this is a very, very, very tiny potential, admittedly. But, if you're going to look at it like a security expert would, and you're looking for potential vectors of attack, I don't know. I don't know that this one doesn't hold water. You've got a company that could potentially amass huge amounts of power in both nodes. I mean, they could spit up a bunch of nodes and create and have, I don't know how many nodes there are in the Bitcoin Cash network, but there's probably 10,000 in the Bitcoin Core network. I bet I'd be shocked if there was more than 2,000 in Bitcoin Cash. It wouldn't be much to take that over. It wouldn't be much. They'd certainly have majority mining power in Bitcoin Cash, and they would have tanked Bitcoin. So then what do we have?
Yeah, according to blockchair.com, Bitcoin Cash has 2,274 nodes right now.
So
compared to Bitcoin, which is 10,020. Man, it's almost like you had these numbers in front of you.
I didn't, shockingly, but
Carstradamus.
Whoa!
Whoa!
So anyway, that's why I wrote. That's right. I wrote the article more to spark the discussion because I see a lot of people talking about it and running victory laps already, and I'm just not sure I'm ready to run one.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what's going. I mean, I don't know. I agree that there's concern for exactly what you're saying. What do you think the chances are that the IPO is more of them realizing the thing that we wanted to do, the big marketing campaign, the flipping that we tried before, it ended up not working, and this is just kind of our way to bail ourselves out?
98%.
Okay.
Well, the tough thing with that is to say it's how we're going to bail out. Now, I realize there's a lot of, I guess we could say, dumb money in the space, but you need someone to buy. So if you have a piece of shit and you're trying to sell it, no one's going to buy it.
Well, and you're right, Slappy, but I'm just not sure that everybody knows what they have. I mean, I think you're looking at something that could be a lot like the .com bubble and people buying into pets.com.
Sure.
Where they just don't really know. I mean, think about explaining Bitcoin to the average person, like when you're at the bar. I mean, their eyes are glazing over. Then start talking about scaling debates between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. These people probably have no fucking idea. Yeah,
there is
definitely. Of course, that's true. But I mean, we're talking about serious money.
Yeah, you're right, man.
If I'm a billionaire and someone's coming and asking for $100 million, I don't just throw that around.
Yeah, you're right. There is that. There's that of saying there's no way that they're. But well, yeah.
Look at all.
I mean,
look
I know
at all the
bad
other
investments have happened before. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the other market crashes that have happened. That was big time money involved in it.
Yeah, there's no guarantee, but I just don't think it's easy enough to say this will be our exit strategy, as if we have this piece of shit and someone will buy it.
Well, but here's the thing, Slappy, is they don't have this piece of shit. They have a very valid and very profitable mining operation.
Right,
So,
but not if they know it's going down.
No. They still do, because they're still mining Bitcoin, and they still are basically a monopoly seller of mining rigs.
Right, okay.
So they have a legitimate,
they have a real business.
Yeah,
powerful business.
I get that.
I meant an exit strategy for their attempt to make Bitcoin Cash kind of the king. Not an exit strategy of mining right. I just meant that we tried to make a buttload of money off Bitcoin Cash. It didn't work. All right, so now we got a lot of illiquid funds tied up there. How do we free that up?
Well, they could be doing that, but they could be just exits. Everyone
who makes a business has an exit strategy. That's why you do a business,
right?
Yeah.
you sell it at some point, and an
Right.
IPO is one way to sell your business. So,
Right.
are they going to retain control of it?
I think they have plans to retain a percentage control, and I've actually seen Jihan is saying that he wants to retain majority, but I don't. But I think that's so early that it's tough to say, and I would imagine that there's a lot of posturing that goes in there too. So
Of course.
I don't know how ready I am to accept any specific number, but yeah, certainly. You're right. I mean, this thing is going to be scrutinized by experts if they're throwing around that kind of money. But
well, it's always been a contentious thing too with people in this world about selling their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash. Because I know Roger Ver was in an interview where they were asking. This was probably about a year ago, or so, I don't know how long ago it was, but they were asking him. We heard that you sold a lot of your Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin Cash, and he said, I've never sold a single Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin Cash. I still, blah, 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 blah. And then they pushed him on it. And then he eventually said, well, I had some Bitcoin tied up in an exchange. I really never knew what I wanted to do with it. So I used that to buy Bitcoin Cash. So there's a history, and I know Roger Ver is not Jihan Wu. He's not Bitmain, but there's kind of a history of kind of this, like I said, the contention about doing that and dishonesty behind it.
Yeah. So
sorry, my cat is sitting on my lap and trying to destroy what we're doing right now. I guess he's a big Jihan Wu fan or something.
So Slappy, there's a lot more. We could talk about this probably for
of course,
days. But yeah, it's basically, I think that there's two main routes. One is that Jihan and co want to stay in, and one is that they want to get out. And then once you take your step to one of those stones, then there's 4 or 5 stones that you could step to from each of those. So if you say he wants to get out, maybe, they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to evaluate it, but they evaluate the true value of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be the fact that he's been buying up Bitcoin Cash to prop up the price a little bit for ego and maybe a little bit to hold up some semblance of valuation based on the reserves that they already have. I don't know. It starts to get really complicated, and I'm sure we're going to find out more as time goes on and more paperwork's released, and maybe a couple of people slip up on Twitter or something like that. But I think that there's an opportunity to exploit the collective ignorance of people that are about to buy into this thing without likely knowing what they're buying.
I think that's a good possibility for sure.
Yeah, because
and to your point, there's probably going to be experts evaluating it, and it would be very difficult to completely pull the wool over everybody's eyes. But on a continuum of IPOs across the board of all IPOs that have ever happened, this is probably leaning on the side of less knowledge from the investors versus an IPO of like a furniture store.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So there is opportunity for
absolutely
exploitative behavior.
Yeah.
That you would think.
I mean, wasn't there a company that like changed their name to blockchain and then
other
their
stock
price went way up because everyone started buying it? So I'm not saying that that's not out there. I know there's a lot of dumb money out there.
Well, it's the and I know we're not trying to get into a flame war about this, but it's the major point behind this is that why would Jihan Wu and Bitmain be dumping their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash when Bitcoin Cash is not anything special, basically? I mean, I know there's a lot of people that like Bitcoin Cash out there in the libertarian world that are going to be listening to this, but it doesn't really offer anything. It's just a crappier form of Bitcoin, to put it bluntly.
Well, I mean, that's our view. They would say it's faster, cheaper transactions. And for the purposes of this podcast, fine,
Right.
But
as far as like overall security, I get that. But I mean, you look at the reasons that it's faster and cheaper. It's because basically no one uses it.
Right. Yeah. That be that as it may, though, as it pertains to this article, the most or this topic, the most important thing is that it runs on the same hashing algorithm as Bitcoin.
Right. So that makes it very easy.
That's really you can seamlessly switch from one to the other.
Yep.
And that's the big thing. So,
so do you know anything about the recent Bitcoin Cash fork debate that's going on now? 'Cause I haven't been following it, and I wonder if there's anything. Was there anything involved with kind of changing the hash algorithm?
Not that I've seen on the hash algorithm. I think they're going to increase the block size to 32 megabyte.
Right. As was scheduled.
Right, as was scheduled, November 15th. That's been on the books. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Although I have seen, I've seen Craig Wright talking about forking off something, but it's so difficult to find stuff because, and again, not making a value judgment, just numbers. There's more Bitcoin articles out there just because of Bitcoin, and searching in Google Bitcoin Cash just gets you a bunch of Bitcoin shit. So it's very difficult to search for. So I was looking around trying to figure out exactly what Craig Wright was intending by his fork, or at least threatening a fork or talking about it. And I just couldn't find that much, and that's probably partially due to just my own laziness. But
I think that lends some credence to the big marketing campaigns that they're doing. Is that there's not as much talk in our libertarian world. It really seems like it's Bitcoin, and then right nipping at its heels is Bitcoin Cash.
Right.
Just because that's the nature of the demographics of the two coins. But there's really, when you go, there's not much information on Bitcoin Cash because it's not. And again, I'm not trying to denigrate it here. I'm just kind of stating what it is. But they've done a great job of their marketing campaign and making it seem like it's something that it's not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, when you can't find, if there's supposed to be a flippening that was going to happen or will happen, you would expect a little bit more use, a little bit more attention from developers and users and everything.
Yeah. But to bring it back to its relevance to this particular topic, that's completely irrelevant to a potential attack in 2020 if that's what they wanted to do.
Right. No. Yeah. I'm just saying that it just shows that it is something that's not on the up and up what they're doing. It provides more evidence to that, whether it's true or not, or it only helps that case.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and and I mean, keep in mind that it is. It's not even in the top 3 coin market cap.
Right.
So it's down there, and the bear market has not been kind to it. I mean, it hasn't been kind to anybody, but it certainly has not been kind to Bitcoin Cash.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I guess, do you guys have any additional thoughts on that? That was just a thing, and I want to reiterate too that the question you asked me, what do I think the odds are that this is the plan versus just maybe an exit strategy? Very low, but I think they're there. I think that I've laid out a reasonable case to do something like this. I mean, you could do it. I think you could do it. It would be tough. It would be a lot tougher than how I'm talking it would be. It would be very, very tough because it's a dynamic market and people would be reacting to the things that you're doing. So it would be really, really difficult. But with $16 billion, things become a lot less difficult.
Yeah.
And all of the incentives that are theoretically there to prevent somebody from doing it would be gone. So that's just the concern on my end, I guess. And like you were saying earlier, Rollo, and I hadn't actually realized this, but to perform a 51% attack, you don't, well, I mean, a 51% attack is named after having 51% of the network, but to perform an attack with your mining operation, you may only need 30%, 40% of the network power. So maybe they could even do it right now. Why wouldn't they do it now? Well, they still have 22,000 Bitcoin in their coffer, and they have an upcoming IPO that if they did that, it would rock the whole boat, and maybe they wouldn't get valued at $16 billion. So That's why they would not perform something like this right now. They would wait until an opportune time, because this is a very, like, what I'm describing is an incredibly low percentage shot. Like, it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah. And the and doing the consensus attack when you've only got 40% of the hashing power across the network, you've got a chance, but it's not like when you've got 51%, you've got a really, really good chance of succeeding. Right. Whereas when you've got the lower, you've got a shot, but it's not quite there. And if you're trying to do something like we're suspecting that Bitmain might be, it's a one-shot deal. It's not like this
is an Osama bin Laden raid. Like,
right.
This is
it's not like it's a government that's just trying to destroy the network and they're going to do it however they can. This is more like a plausible deniability thing.
Yeah,
and if they get caught.
Right. You got to get in, you got to get out, you got to do it accurately, and you got to do it on the first time.
And if they don't succeed, but they cause maybe a little bit of disruption, but not enough to really affect anything, then they man, if you get caught being a main player like that, caught trying to destroy Bitcoin,
right.
I have a feel that people might not.
What's going to be interesting is doing it as a public company.
Right.
That's going to be really interesting, because you're going to have to justify this to investors and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's ways of hiding exactly what you're doing. But that'll
they're going to have to show all their financials, though.
Right. But theoretically, they wouldn't show anything. Not until day of, right? I mean,
after they're public. I mean,
no, I know. But I mean, even when they're public, all they have to do is just continue doing what they're doing right now. That's it. They have to continue what they're doing and increase their mining power, which they would do otherwise, because they're a company that specializes in mining power. So they're not going to necessarily
grow.
What's up?
I presume they want to grow, or at least that's what they're telling their investors.
It's not like in the 2 years or year and a half leading up that they're going to be doing. They're going to have their fingerprints on stuff. They're going to be just doing exactly what they would be doing anyway. It may be a little bit tough to convince people to sell your Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash. I mean, that's a bizarre deal, especially if we hit another bull market. I would imagine that gap is probably going to widen, and that may be a bizarre explanation, but I don't know. Maybe I imagine they could get around that somehow.
And just to say, they might do this IPO and act as a okay actor from here on out.
Yeah, true. That's true. Yeah.
Because it's plausible that they just say like, hey, we can raise money and think we can grow the business this way. But it's just the fact that because I don't think we wouldn't be having this conversation if they didn't trade all their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash like that.
That's really the trigger.
That's what it is, because that's where that's the point where you say this doesn't make sense. Like you said, Jihan Wu, the rest of the people running Bitmain, they're not dumb guys. There's a reason that they're doing stuff. And, what was it? Was this, is this the ultimate, master plan, or did something not work and this is a way to kind of recover? And also, they've kind of got, it's a good hedge, I guess, because if their original attack plan didn't work out, then they can still make some money and still grow their business and not fail. They're going to wear some egg on their face, because it's like, man, you sold all your Bitcoin Cash, but there's still a lot of money to be made, and people, I'm sure, will be forgiving of them if they if they turn
at a multi-billionaire for fucking up, because at the end of the day, he's a multi-billionaire and you're not.
Right.
So, like, at the end of the day, Jihan Wu can kind of hide behind that and be like, well, I made one poor business decision among a million great ones, so sorry.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we're still the most powerful player in the market.
Yeah,
despite this mistake.
Yeah, and we're growing. Yeah.
Which, I mean, hopefully that shows that it's a good Bitcoin's pretty good. Is it even with if Jihan Wu and Bitmain do have nefarious intentions, they're still kind of getting forced to be good actors if it works out this way. So,
yeah, that's an interesting point too.
So it just goes to show that this is the big experiment in free markets and everything, and it's so far it's been successful with flying colors. Bitcoin,
absolutely.
So,
and not only that, it's provided more entertainment than I could ever ask for.
Yeah, like that's true.
Following it on a day-to-day basis is incredible. It's just it's like a soap opera for nerds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's awesome. So, yeah, guys, I mean, anything else that you want to talk about with respect to this article or anything revolving around Bitmain or mining or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. In your article, when you were kind of creating the allegory for how Bitcoin works,
yeah,
you said that like the miners were a bunch of like dudes, like big, strong, tough dudes, because they can lift a lot of boxes that were supposed to be the blocks.
Yep.
But you named one of them Skylar.
I did.
Like that doesn't make sense. Look, that doesn't make sense. That makes even less sense than Jihan Wu selling his Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's like a meta, like it's symbolism or something.
Bro, we have a huge demographic of Skylers who listen to us.
Well, we just
your viewership's down 50% after this.
We just lost them.
You just torpedoed your own network.
Dang it!
With a Skylar attack.
Speaking of attacks, I mean, Car, you've been on this podcast a lot now. Are you trying to attack the Rollo and Slappy show?
Yeah, well, I mean, give it another year or two, and maybe I'll get it.
If you get on 51% of our episodes.
Well, I mean. You could just pay me out right now. You take my spot, free up a lot of time, and.
Nah, I'm looking for investors. I'm thinking about taking it public before I do anything.
Okay, how much do you think the spot on the Rollo and Slappy show will be worth?
Probably like some fraction of Bitcoin Cash.
Oh, like 100 tenths.
Yeah, 200 true Satoshis. Okay. 200 Satoshi True Visions.
Well, I was thinking about making an offer for a spot on the Friends Against Government podcast.
Oh, you're thinking about making an offer, huh?
Yeah, like $10. $10 for me to be.
I'll talk it over with my business partner.
Okay. And by the way, you would have to pay me $10 to do it.
Okay. Well, I'll still talk it over with my business partner.
Okay.
You might still be interested. But yeah, so this article I wrote, I think the first probably 60% of it, 70% of it is like a setup, and I try to keep it really low level and kind of fun, because the point of the article was not necessarily all the technical stuff, but more just the fascinating business stuff that's happening. So even for any of the listeners that aren't as interested in the technical or knowledgeable about the technical, I think it still should make for a decent read.
Yeah, Carr did do a very good job of explaining it in that allegory that I was talking about. So yeah, even if you don't understand Bitcoin protocol at all, you don't understand how it works, he does a good job of, you can go in completely cold and understand what's going on by the end of it.
Yeah.
And we'll link to it in the show notes page.
Cool. Awesome. And thanks for reviewing it for the technical stuff. I think, Rollo, you're probably quite a bit out ahead of me on the technical, and I sent it to you for a proofread, so appreciate it, man.
No problem. Thank you. And that's a good segue to our free market success story, because I just read Andre Antonopoulos' book, Mastering Bitcoin, and it was absolutely excellent and really helped push my knowledge of Bitcoin and related topics way out ahead of where it was. So it's just, I think this book costs like $30. But it's a way that you can just gain knowledge. It's really not that expensive in the long run, $30 to gain knowledge of something that's probably going to change the world in a way that is absolutely fantastic. So I think that's a pretty good investment. There's no way that the government would even create Bitcoin, much less have you learn about it. Even if they did decide that you should learn about it, they would make you sit in a public school and learn about it that way, which would just be absolutely brutal. So there are market ways to learn about Bitcoin very well, and all this, and any subject, for pretty cheap, if not for free. I mean, I decided to pick up the book because I know Antonopoulos has a good history of explaining Bitcoin, so I trusted that, and it worked out really well. So.
You then sent us a text talking about the book that you bought, and you were reading it. And from the text, I was able to purchase my own copy I got the Kindle version. It was like $10 or something. Yeah. And it happened instantly. You were like, hey, check out this book. And I was, sure, buy, done, have it, like instantaneously.
Yeah, so I recommend that. And there's some technical stuff in there. There's some coding stuff. I mean, I did a little bit of coding in college. So some stuff was, I had to read a couple times, but a lot of the book was more qualitative information as opposed to, digging deep into code. And he just explained a lot of the code in a way that someone who's not really up on it can grasp. So I think it's a book for anybody really to pick up if you're interested. So it's my free market success story.
Nice.
So with that, again, show notes page is mcflugel.com/104.
Something?
Yeah. We'll link to Car's Medium post called Bitmain.
So wait, we're on 104?
Yeah.
Car's been on 100, 103, and 104?
Oh, man.
Take it. This is the start of the 51.
No.
The start of the 51.
Well, it's funny because
here's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna I'm gonna wiretap you guys and hear whatever you're interested in that week, and then read up on it, like
so why
preceding the podcast, and then just casually bring it up in our text conversation.
So wiretap meaning that you're just on the episodes. What's funny is that we were the reason that you're on tonight was came from a joke.
Yes,
we're joking about because I've been on vacation. I was on vacation all last week, so I wasn't. Not that we ever planned what we're going to talk about more than a couple of hours before the show. But I just my mind. It was the first day back at work. My mind just didn't want to work today, and so we're kind of talking. The three of us plus Bird, kind of talking back and forth about this article, and then about we're going to cover for our episode, and then we're kind of joking around we can just make fun of Car's article. And then I was like, well,
the words were ripped it apart line by line.
And they're just kind of well, maybe Car could just come on and talk about it. I have to ease back in following my vacation.
I'm glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
of
thanks
course.
for joining us.
Yeah. So also on the show notes page, we'll link you to just Car's Medium section, the voluntary mess, as well as ways to follow him on Twitter and check out the Friends Against Government podcast that Car is a part of with Birdarchist. Also, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and all the other podcast catchers. You can find that at mcflugel.com. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe to our email list, where if you sign up, you'll get a discount off at libertymugs.com. Also on the show notes page, if you sign up to the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom through our affiliate link on the show notes page, we'll give you a free Liberty mug. You just got to let us know. So send us an email if you do that, and we'll send you a coupon code for that totally free Liberty mug. So check out Liberty mugs too. We've put up some beer mugs, adding them slowly. It's a little bit more difficult to get them up than normal coffee mugs, so they're not going up as quickly, but we're getting them. So if you have any suggestions or something that you want, let us know. We'll put it up there, and that'll help us. And it'll help you. So, win-win situation there. Friends podcast. So we mentioned the Friends Against Government with Carr and Bird. We've also got Mance Raiders, Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast, which I was a recent guest on. I don't know which number episode. It might have been 139. But we talked about destroying the social contract theory. So go give that a listen. And also just check out Mance's podcast. He does a great job. What else we got? Peaceful Treason podcast. Dino Files.
I was just on a Peaceful Treason podcast, by the way.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I don't think they've published it yet.
Okay, yeah.
The next one up will be me.
Okay, so did you partake in Cerveza of the Week?
No, I was drinking cheap wine, but I was there for it.
Oh, okay. Sponsored by Liberty Mugs. And Jeremiah Harding. Can't forget about him, who does 8 million things a day. I don't think I'm missing anybody.
I don't think so.
No, I think you're good.
Okay. So,
If we did, sorry.
yeah. So with that, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.
Peace.